to record the meeting, and we'll send a private link out to all residents via letter and e-newsletter afterwards. We've got a number of things that we're going to look to discuss today, but there'll be plenty of, that's not much, you'll be pleased to know we haven't got too many slides. Plenty of time to take your questions, and I think we can take those questions as we go along. If they emerge, feel free just to pop a question in the chat or pop your hand up. And if I can just ask anyone to be on mute if they're not contributing, just so that we're all able to hear the speakers, that would be much appreciated. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Aubrey. So for those that I haven't met before, my name is James Casper. I'm the Neighbourhood Director of the Lancaster West Neighbourhood Team. We're responsible for providing housing management services to Bramley House and also the refurbishment of the block. I'm joined today with Sharon Davies, who I can see is already on camera, who's our Head of Property Refurbishment and Decarbonisation. And Aubrey, if you want to pop your camera on just to say hello.
Oh, I'm doing the shared
screen. All right, Aubrey's sharing his screen, so we might see a little bit later on. So Aubrey's our refurbishment project manager, who is responsible and will be working very hard with all of you to deliver the refurbishment works at Bramley House. Next slide, please, Aubrey. So what we're going to do today is we're going to provide an update. We met a couple of months ago now, I think it was, in terms of the surveys which we were undertaking. There's some new surveys as well, primarily from feedback you've already given us, but also in terms of us raising the ambition. And we've got some really good, exciting funding news that we're going to share with you shortly as well. And we're going to feedback in terms of your what we believe to be the priorities, and give you a bit of an update in where we are, certainly in terms of the Windows programme and also the internal refurbishment programme. Next slide, please, Aubrey. So where are we now?
So we're looking at the external works, and as these are your priorities, particularly the windows, this is what's been spending most of the time ensuring that we get right. So the windows, the roof survey, the brick fabric and the drainage. We may have Ed Baines from Stace LLP, who's the building surveyor, on the line. Is Ed there? Well, they've been sent an invite anyway, but these are the areas that we're covering in terms of the external. Good afternoon, Ed. How are you?
I'm here, Aubrey.
Good. Okay, so moving on. So in terms of the surveys, this is the detail that we've been looking at, particularly around the external envelope of the building. So the concrete repairs, the schedule of works, the roof survey, the structural engineers. New things that we've considered are the green roof feasibility and the PVs that we're now looking at, as well as below and above ground drainage. Ed, would you like to say something around the issues that you've found so far?
In respect to the building as a whole?
Yeah, and the surveys, just around the surveys that you've been undertaking.
Yeah, so we've undertaken, or a roof survey has been undertaken to determine the condition of the roof covering, and also to identify if there are any existing penetrations through the covering. Core samples have previously been taken, which did suggest that there is water laying below the roof felt covering, which deems then that their water is passing through the roof layer, so therefore that needs to be dealt with. So the proposal currently is to strip the roof covering and to replace it with a new roof covering, which will also incorporate the parapets as well within that, which is a known weak link in the covering.
Thank you. I can hear some background noise. I'm not sure if that's a question being asked. So in terms of looking at the external programme of works, we've now scheduled this out. So once we are able to review the specification that Ed's putting together shortly, and having the leaseholder consultation and the feedback from that, we'll then be in a position to go out to tender by Q3. and start the project thereafter. James, over to you.
Thanks, Aubrey. So when we met last time, we had some good news for Bramley House in the form of an additional £250,000 for the block as a whole. Since then, as we decided that we're looking to not just provide double glazed improvements to your current single glazing, but triple glazing. We've actually successfully secured some additional funding from the government's Green Homes Grant Fund. If you move to the next slide, please, Aubrey, we detail exactly how much that is. So that's an additional £191,000 dedicated to Bramley House on the basis of the Windows programme, in particular, improving your energy performance. What that allows us to do, because we already had the funding for the windows, is to reprofile our funding so that we're able to look at the roof improvement works. And that includes potentially looking at green roofs and even solar or so-called PV, photovoltaic panels as well. So some really good news. Again, there is no implications here on leaseholders in terms of conditions of this funding. We still wouldn't be charging the difference between double and triple glazing, but it does mean in terms of the block refurbishment works as a whole, we're in a position to have a greater chance of ensuring that Bramley House is carbon neutral as soon as possible before the council's 2030 target. So we did want to share that with you exclusively today as well. Thanks, Aubrey.
So in terms of the window programme, we've been working in the background, undertaking quite a lot of hard work, trying to get surveys in and suppliers to quote for the works at the moment. So we've looked at single, double and triple glazed windows, combination of aluminium, composite and timber UPVC, as well as speaking with the planners to see what their requirements are as well before we bring things to leaseholders. And here's a sort of a matrix that we've looked at. Sharon, over to you.
Okay, yeah, so as Aubrey has said, we've investigated what you previously asked us to look at in terms of different types of windows, so UPVC and aluminium and timber frames. So feedback from planning on pre-planning advice is that we need to keep the heritage look on Bramley House with the material of window that we would go for. So planning applications obviously are expensive. They need to be done on a per flat basis. So we prayed for pre-planning advice, and we were rejected on UPVC and advised that the outcome would be the same for an aluminium unless we looked for something that was a composite with timber. So the windows that we'll be trialling in one Bramley for everybody to come and look at are a timber triple glazed frame that's lightweight, so easy to use in terms of the opening. Obviously, because of the triple glazing, it will provide better thermal comfort, but that is only a trial. So it's a pilot for everybody to come and look at. The obviously decision does sit with yourselves, but we will be refused planning if we went for a UPVC. So we do need to bear that in mind, that rejected planning applications obviously do affect the budget. So planning application has to be done for every flat. So it's several £1,000s for planning to be rejected. We will have different types of frame in one Bramley for you to be able to look at, again, as what we did with the previous open house. But a lot of work has gone into finding a material that meets planning regulations as well as improves the thermal comfort and meets that heritage look requirement. So moving on to the next slide. Just a reminder here of the upgrade that we would be looking to do in terms of saving everybody on their annual costs in terms of the thermal comfort of what the triple glazing will bring, and obviously the added bonus that for leaseholders the cost would only be the recharge that we would consult on, obviously through Section 20 leaseholder consultation, would be the difference between that single and triple glazing as opposed to the whole of the window replacement. So then moving on. We did, Aubrey, you have to remind me on what the expected cost per year for the saving between the single and the triple glazing was. I know that you did find that out, but this is a video that we're going to attempt to play just to show you the windows that we'll be putting into 1 Bramley, just to show you how easy to use they are. So hopefully this will work. Hopefully that is working for everybody to be able to see. So okay, I think that is probably playing quite slowly because of the size of the file. But we will add it up to the Instagram page after the event this evening so that people can see it in a quicker time, and the explanation from the designers. So Aubrey has carried out this site visit to look at the quality of the window. The company are called Nika Design, who do this triple glazed timber window that is very lightweight in the sash. So what we will ask, if anybody wants to look at the style of windows before they go into number 1 Bramley, if you wanted to look at them on site, we will get back in contact with the designers if anybody wishes to look at them before, but obviously everybody in the block will be invited to come and look at the sample windows in 1 Bramley. At the moment we're looking at about a 10-week lead-in time for that for the manufacturing. Okay, then moving on. So 1 Bramley will be the new show flat that we'll be inviting everybody to come and look at based on the feedback that you gave us from last time for our last open house event. So works have started. As you can see, there's some pictures at the bottom down there where we're currently at with it. So it's being plastered, asbestos has been removed. And yeah, the windows will obviously be, I think, the key feature that everybody will want to come and have a look at and trial and see how they look and feel. And we're expecting this to be completed late summer. So the new style kitchen will be in there. And there's been a replacement of the boiler and the heating system and the flooring that everybody liked from last time, and the carpets. So it's a 3-bedroom house, so we'll give the opportunity for people to come and have a look at the updated spec and how that look and feels. So in terms of empty properties in Bramley, we have currently got 5 empty properties, so we'll be continuing the internal refurbishment of all of those as a programme consecutively. So after 1 Bramley, we'll be looking to do 21 and 25, followed by the others that are also void, and get those let through the local lettings plan. So moving on. At that time, then we would be looking to offer the internal refurbishment for tenanted properties, and we will give the choice, obviously, for styles of kitchen that we talked through previously, and amended the spec based on what people fed back to us at the last open house. So new kitchens and bathrooms for those who want them, but obviously you're not forced to have that. If you're happy with your home and how it is at the moment, then there is no no enforcement of the works. Obviously looking to install new thermostats to help improve that energy loss in properties in Bramley House, and obviously with the improvements to the fabric of the building that we'll be procuring, as spoken about by Edward and Aubrey earlier, we want to really reduce those energy bills and save money. New internal doors that are FD30s to improve fire safety as well will be offered, as well as obviously different styles and options for everybody to suit their own property. Then moving on. I'm going to hand back to James to talk about the heat network before any questions.
Did you ask if there's any questions?
Sorry, my computer was lagging there. Sorry. Yeah, Dora, happy to take questions if you've got a question.
I've got a few. With regards to the roof, there was discussions with regards to a possible roof terrace for tenants, for residents. Is this being considered as much needed outdoor space with sunlight for more than a few hours in the morning is needed? And we all know what good for our health vitamin D does. Residents did use the middle block's roof as a roof terrace in the past. And as KAA have a rooftop playground, I know putting something on the top of a building, an outdoor space on the top of the building that residents can use, is not something that cannot be done. With that in mind also, there was, and when I say there was, these are in reference to the book of ideas which residents went through as a referencing point. There was mention of the living room, bedroom windows for the middle block ground floor flats being 11, 12, 13, 26 and 27, to have their windows replaced with doors to allow access to the outdoor space, to an outdoor space like residents with balconies and garden areas have. Is this something that is being considered to be done? And if not, then I would like the roof terrace to be seriously considered, because Bramley House does suffer from lack of natural sunlight, especially the middle block, the lower 2 floors, and from midday throughout the year, the sun is already directly above the building, and therefore the back where our courtyard is doesn't have any sunlight. So those are my questions with regards to the roof. And I have a question with regards to the windows. Maintenance for the windows, the wooden frame, timber framed windows going forward. What will RBKC be doing to ensure that these frames are maintained better than what the existing wooden framed windows have been maintained? And what is the lifespan of those windows? And what is the difference in cost between double glazed and triple glazed? And what is the difference in function, as in their green credentials, between a double glazed and a triple glazed?
Thanks, Dora. So a few questions and I've jotted down. I may have to bring in some technical colleagues to pick up some of them.
Yeah.
In terms of the roof terrace, so we need to do a structural survey, which we're doing anyway in terms of looking at the green roof and PV options. I see no reason why we can't explore the viability, so it's to do with the loading. So whereas with KAA it was purpose built to have that playground, obviously with Bramley House it wasn't. We need to consider as well in terms of the plant and things like that that's on there. It may well be that part of it, at least, is something we could perhaps provide a roof terrace for. It very much depends on the technical capability. Aubrey, I don't know if yourself or Edward have got anything else to comment at this stage on the roof terrace option.
Well, we are getting a structural engineer involved to see what the roof will take, whether it can take additional, well, whatever it can be used for, whether it's a green roof, PVs, so it's safely. So once that report is coming back, it will tell us, what the structure of the roof is structurally. Ed?
So we can check whether it's viable for a roof terrace. I know there's ways around these things, but is that something we can have a look at?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So we'll take that one away, Adora. Very good suggestion. Second suggestion's around ground floor properties having door access. So this is from your property point of view, I suppose the garden side, so the Bramley Road side. Is that right, Adora? Is that what you were suggesting?
Correct.
Yeah. So I know there's a stairwell that affects some of those properties, but not all of them. But
that would just be mine.
Right, okay, so I don't know what we can do where there's a stairwell involved, but I know, let's do the survey and then let's find out what's possible one way or the other, even if it's for some of those properties. We would obviously need to consult with residents around some of those things, but I can absolutely see the merit in wanting to explore that option for the reasons that you say. In terms of the maintenance, I think what it's worth sort of doing is just flagging up the fact that we're going to put in the pilot windows and we'll be able to provide a much deeper sort of level of data around how long the windows are expected to last in terms of maintenance. It's quite clear to me that those windows, well, they're very old already, the windows you've got at the moment. They haven't been particularly well maintained. But one of the things we want to do is provide the assurance that they're robust and they're going to last. I mean, Aubrey, how long do we think they would typically last before requiring replacement, the new standard of triple glazed timber windows?
Well, normally windows have a 25-year plus, lifespan. These ones will contain the argon gas, so we just need to check to see, what the seal is around the windows and how long they need to, or how long they will last before the gas needs to be updated or repressurized, etc. But that's something we could look into.
Great. And then Adora, you asked a question around sort of value for money, bang for your buck, if you like. So interestingly, with NISA, we have got the table that we can show. I think the difference was very little in regards to triple versus double, but in terms of their energy performance, it could be up to sort of 35% more efficient. So we're forecasting that the savings to residents would be in excess of around £150 a year in terms of your heating bills. So quite a considerable improvement, particularly in terms of noise as well. We expect there to be significant improvements. But once again, that bit of it, if you like, from a leaseholder point of view, is being gifted, if you like, in terms of from the council. And so you will benefit from something which the rest of the borough, we're still not at a stage where we're able to offer triple glazed windows in the way that we are for Bramley House. So I hope that provides a bit of assurance, and definitely by the time that we get those windows fitted in the next open house and number 1 Bramley, hopefully we'll be able to provide greater level of information. And I think, am I right saying, Aubrey, we should be able to offer site visits potentially, certainly as restrictions ease, to other locations nearby to have a look at these windows. Is that something we can cater for?
Yes, we can ask Nika Design, the window manufacturer, on other sites that they've got nearby. We can arrange a visit to see the window in action for a group of residents who are interested in coming along, or otherwise wait for the install. But if you want to come earlier, we can arrange that.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Can I just say, with regards to the gifting, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. But I was thinking more on the lines of savings in one place could mean that we can get other stuff done. So that was more of my thinking with regards to the triple and the double. If there was a financial saving in cost, that financial saving could be used somewhere else on the block where it's needed. That was my thinking in asking that question.
Yeah, I understood, Adora. Very good point. And I think in terms of building elements that we could look at beyond the ones we're looking at the moment, it would involve things like external wall insulation, internal wall insulation, and so on and so forth. Looking at doing more with the roof than just replacing it with a very efficient, non-combustible warm roof system. So we're certainly not in a position whereby upgrading from double to triple, you would be losing out in any way. And in fact, we're waiting for the thermographic information to come back. But we know, if I use the walkways, for example, on Lancaster West, half of all the heat is going out through their glazing. Now, their glazing is very large, so perhaps that's not surprising. But we think that with the windows, it is a very and we'll get the survey results and more than happy to share that with you. It is a very sound investment in terms of that difference. And I think I'm right in saying it was only a couple of £1,000 per property different with the supplier we're currently using. So it's not like we're paying double or anything like that. So it's a relatively small amount for a disproportionately positive gain, if you see what I mean, in terms of energy performance with the double to triple.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adora. Great. Okay, so I just want to give a bit of an update on the heat network plans for Notting Dale. So Notting Dale, many of you will know, 70% of the ward is social housing, which gives a couple of opportunities in terms of the improvement works to Bramley House. Now, we've got a map in front of you which shows Lancaster West and shows Bramley House up there on the top left. Now, in terms of the two sort of sides, if you like, of Lancaster West, we've got two heat networks which are powered by gas boilers which are in need of replacement. In doing so, we're having a look at what we can do to be not just cost efficient, but also efficient from the point of view of the council's commitment and indeed the government's commitment to carbon neutrality. We know that a lot of our residents, including Bramley House, are committed to sustainability, and we're keen for us to explore renewable energy. And it's certainly something I've had more than one conversation with a number of residents at Bramley House about. So how might this benefit Bramley House? Well, in advancing the renewable heat network idea at the heart of Notting Dale and Lancaster West, that will cover about 795 properties. A typical heat network can cover up to about 2,000 properties. So what we're looking to do is to potentially expand the heat network. And the reason why we might do that is sort of threefold. One is around the fact that gas as an energy source is obviously carbon intensive and therefore is contributing towards climate change. Secondly, we know that some residents have safety concerns around gas. It does require maintenance and the annual checks and so on and so forth. And the third is, if you move to the next slide, please, Aubrey, the fact that gas is going to be slowly but surely phased out of our economy and our society. And so if we were to replace a gas boiler now, it's very unlikely that it would be left in situ for the 15-year period it was built for. And so from a disruption point of view and from a value for money point of view, it makes sense for us to think now rather than in sort of 8-9 years time as things are phased out. How can we future-proof all the blocks that we manage and indeed all the blocks across the borough as gas combi boilers become something which we can't use. Now, there are a number of things that are being looked at. People are talking about bringing hydrogen into the existing gas supply and all that sort of thing. And that absolutely is one avenue. But with a heat network whereby you generate your heat units, if you like, locally by extracting it from the air, and a number of you will be aware of Verity Close, our first low energy council home just down the road from Bramley, or from extracting heat from the ground, or even from sewer sources as another option in terms of securing an abundance of heat. That this is 4 times more efficient than converting, say, electricity directly into, say, an electrical radiator. So by capturing the heat locally, it is both clean and green, but it is also a lot cheaper and a lot better value for money. Now, this isn't something that would happen quickly, but again, I just think it's important that residents of Bramley House are aware of this particular potential opportunity. If you move to the next slide, please, Aubrey, I'll give you a sense of the timelines. So in terms of those two main areas of Lancaster West, and I think it's important to say we do manage other blocks, so Treadgold House, Verity Close, Campbell Mews, which are also on gas combi boilers, so it's not the case that we're not having the same conversations with them as well. But through the refurbishment programme, that would include the internal refurbishment of Bramley House, we're providing new plumbing, smart thermostats, new radiators, so they're fit for purpose, they're not going to leak, and they're going to last, for decades to come. In terms of the temporary boiler, which is at Whitchurch Road at the moment, we'd look at 2023, 2024, that to be replaced, probably by two large commercial air source heat pumps, either above the leisure centre, the roof can take that load, otherwise it'd be adjacent to it. We are in conversation with the Academy and the Leisure Centre about them joining our heat network as well. Those sorts of additions would mean that we're able to ensure that residents are paying a lower price than our commercial rate, so there'll be benefits effectively of the council being able to sell or export its heating and hot water energy to other providers. And we'll be looking that by 2030 that the final remaining communal gas plant on the east side of Lancaster West would be switched off, with an electric boiler being there purely for resilience. So I just wanted to set out that timeline because it's quite an exciting and new opportunity that's going on in the ward, and it's one where Bramley House could potentially benefit much sooner than other blocks, certainly in the ward, may benefit. I realise that there would be lots of questions, concerns around pricing and how do we know that people aren't going to be paying more by switching over, and there'd be lots of conversations along those lines in the months and years ahead. But I just wanted to take this opportunity just to update you, and this is going to potentially be considered by the leadership team and potentially approved on Wednesday, but this is pertinent only to Lancaster West at this stage. So there's no decisions being made about Bramley House or about Bramley House residents without you being involved. But given it's called the Nottingdale Heat Network, rightly, I would expect you to have questions about, well, what does this mean for us? And it would simply be an opportunity in the years ahead. But in the next year or so, we're absolutely focused in terms of providing you with the new windows and some of the suggestions that Dora, you've certainly provided around what could we do with the roof, what could we do with the garden areas, and obviously that internal refurbishment programme. Happy to take any questions specifically on the heat network. Otherwise, I think Aubrey will take us on to next steps.
Sorry, can I ask what would be the alternative to the heat network, based on the fact that we've got the government telling us we've got to get everything done by be green and carbon, what is it, zero carbon by 2030? What's the alternative?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Dora. So there's different theories and approaches to this. So one is about greening the gas supply, and there are various ways in which one can do that, but ultimately it's very hard to do that it does get to being a zero carbon form of heat. There is an electric boiler approach. So an electricity can often be 3-4 times as much as a gas unit. So in terms of that efficiency I was mentioning with the heat pump solution, you don't get that with electrics at all. Now we can look at offsetting some of that by putting PV panels on the roof, so you'll be generating your own electricity. However, it's very unlikely that would generate anywhere near enough to be able to suppress bills if we were just to move from gas to electricity. Now, there are some places that will focus on an electric only heating system, less so the hot water, but often the heating system. But that's where you've got very, very good levels of energy performance. Now, we're expecting that the windows will have a transformational impact of Bramley House, but the way that the walls were built in particular, it's not going to be to the stage where you wouldn't need quite a bit of heating demand that would need to be met by an additional appliance. And so whilst the new windows will bring down your heat demand, it won't be to a level where just switching you over to electric will make that much of a difference. So that brings me back to this heat pump approach, and it may well be, so in terms of other options, it could be a block level approach where you just have air source heat pumps, again, probably on the roof, just for Bramley House. We're exploring that with Treadgold House for different reasons. But there are other opportunities, and we would obviously sort of explain them with you to make sure that you're happy with those alternative solutions. And I think it's fair to say this is something that as a country we're going to have to talk more and more about. But again, just in terms of the work that we're doing, we've definitely found that a heat network of this sort means you get those economies of scale to benefit residents, which you don't with a more individualised approach, which a block approach is in between sort of an individual approach and a sort of a neighbourhood level approach, if you like. Theoretically, everybody could have individual air source heat pumps, so you'd be talking a lot of what would look like air conditioning units, if you like, all over the place. There's an aesthetic consideration to that as well, but they're not as efficient as larger ones. And obviously, you could have a situation where someone, you know, heats up a tank full of water but then doesn't need it, whereas next door could have done with that. So that's the benefit of a more communal system. But we recognise that certainly for those blocks that do have their individual heating on hot water, it would feel a lot different. Although actually, in terms of what it would look like, it would basically be swapping out your gas combi boiler for what's called a heat interface unit, where the water would come in and then you could increase the temperature of it if that's what you prefer. So in many ways, it's not that dissimilar to what you've got at the moment. Instead of a gas supply coming in, it would just be a hot water supply coming in. Is that helpful at all, Azora?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you very much. I'm interested in it.
And
a number of private properties with gas central heating, so I'm interested in how this will be done. So yeah, thanks. Really informative.
Vasiliki, I can see you've got your hand up. Vasiliki? No? Okay, we'll wait for Vasiliki to potentially speak to us. But otherwise, should we move on, Aubrey?
Oh, so just in terms of the next steps now, so obviously we just held the open house event previously and the consultation today. We're looking to continue, as James said earlier, to the remaining empty properties and get those programmed in. So Cavendish will be starting shortly, I think on number 25. We'll get all the surveys completed, and then Ed will produce his feasibility study for us to get signed off and the specification of works before we go out to tender the property. But prior to that, the residents will be involved in the tender process and choosing the contractor, as well as reviewing the specification and the whole strategy of the works, so we can go forward as one. Just to say a reminder that the Ease newsletter, you can scan this image and it will bring up the Ease newsletter for you as a matter of course. And we want as many people to, you know, subscribe and receive the newsletter. Well, I'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone for joining in and helping us to move forward with the project. I know it's taken a lot of time, but we're getting there now. So we're looking forward to a successful outcome for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Aubrey. I can see someone's just typing, I think, probably a question, 23 Bramley, so we'll just wait for that to come in. Vasiliki, I don't know whether you still have your question. And if you want to come in, feel free to now. And if anyone else has got any questions, happy to take them now. Baseline Studios is now open for walk-ins as well, so feel free to pop in and have a chat with myself, Sharon and Aubrey. Any plans to add a lift to the building? Right, excellent question. So at the moment, there isn't. We don't currently have the funding in place to look to do that. However, I think that it's fair to say, in terms of the elements of the building, I think, you know, lots of the things that will be addressed will be those sort of, you know, high priorities for residents, and lift would probably be the next one. What we could potentially look to do is quite a high level survey in terms of how many properties might potentially benefit from a lift, but then would need to together go on a bit of a fundraising drive to be frank about it, in terms of the difference that it could make. There would be space, but there's all sorts of things that one would need to consider, you know, in terms of lighting and fire strategy and so on and so forth. I mean, just as a bit of a straw poll, is a lift something that others would be interested in us exploring if we were to be able to find some funding down the back of a sofa somewhere? Vasiliki would like more details about the proposed heating. Absolutely, Vasiliki. Yeah, we just want to put it on the radar for now, so people are aware.
With regards to the lift, James, I believe that when we had the discussions on the book of ideas and the cost of the ideas we had, the lift came out really expensive based on how we would because of the way the building's designed, it was worked out that they would probably need 3 lifts, because we couldn't work out how you could have one lift that would feed the 3 sections of the blocks. So you've got the Letchington Road section, Bramley Road section, and Silchester Road sections of the block.
Yeah.
So we would have needed 3 lifts, and I think that Murray, the architect, was called something Murray something, his name was. I think they were saying like putting flats on top of Bramley, another floor on top of Bramley House, would fund the lifts. That was something that was part of the book of ideas discussions, but I don't think it was something that the majority wanted. But another thing of thinking is, could there not be like more of like disability lifts rather than actual passenger lifts? If it's a need for people who have disability problems and they're already living in the block, if it's something to service that, I don't know. But yeah, I can send you stuff where we had a meeting and went through everything, and then we gave feedback on those specific areas. So I'll try and find the email and the document, and I'll send it over to you just to give you what the discussions were back then.
Thanks, Joel. That'll be really helpful. Yeah. So in terms of those sort of 3 locations, when you look at all the implications around fire strategy, safety, in terms of sort of lighting, electrics, and other sorts of things like that, for 3 lifts, you could easily be looking at sort of £500,000 in terms of 3 external lifts and everything that comes with it. So absolutely, I can see where Murray John, the architects at the time.
That's the one.
Now, in terms of top hatting, as it's called, or building new properties on the top, to be absolutely clear, it's usually because it would be a requirement of building regulations for new build to have lift access that will come with it. Now, when we've spoken before to residents, I wouldn't say it's been overwhelming support. However, if as a group of residents you feel you would like to explore that, we do need to sort of reconcile that with the fact that we've got a roof at the moment that clearly needs some replacing. We've had some asks for roof terrace and all that sort of thing now. So if that is something you would want to explore, then by all means we can. But what I would say is at the moment the council is, you know, in the place of just getting used to building new council homes itself again, and obviously Silchester Arches is one of those locations. So what I would say is that wouldn't be something that would happen anytime too quickly, is all I would add to that. I see Sammy has joined us. I'm just going to take a couple of questions from the chat first, Sammy, and then I'll bring you in if that's okay. So Vasiliki's just asked around paying for communal heating and hot water. How will it be monitored? Yes. So in exactly the same way you would have individual meters now for your gas supply, any sort of renewable heat network approach would also have individual meters as well. Again, that's in line with building regulations. So usage is monitored in that way. That's quite different to what's happening at the moment, certainly on Lancaster West, where there is any individual meters. So there is no disincentive for people to not just run hot water almost for the sake of it, because it's spread amongst so many people. So some of this is about bringing in ways that mean that people are paying for what they use. I've seen you ask the question about standing charge. It tends not to be in the same way you'd have a gas meter standing charge. There is an element of which can be to cover maintenance, management, if you like, and also what's called a heat loss element. So the fact that there would be a communal supply of, you know, it'd be hotter than warm water, but it wouldn't be to the highest level. So then basically as it comes in to your property, your heat interface unit would take it up to the level that you would prefer. So there is a like-for-like comparison in terms of the unit cost that you would pay to gas versus what you would pay for any renewable heat network. Now, what we're looking at the moment is a way of bringing in a resident price promise. We're certainly, so Adora asked alternatives. The alternative I didn't outline was you just hang on to your individual gas boilers until they're illegal. Now, what we're looking to do is make sure that if residents in Nottingdale were to say, well, actually, we want to save the planet and we want to, you know, future-proof this, we don't want the disruption twice. What we don't want to do is penalise our residents for doing that. So we're developing whether we can offer a price promise where we say you wouldn't be paying any more than you would do per unit of your gas. So that's something we're working on in the next few months. But I can see the questions have started to come through now. And absolutely, that's something there'll probably be a lot more discussion about, including Bramley House residents, in the months ahead. But just to assure you, we're looking at a number of years away from doing anything. So if your gas boiler's got an issue at the moment, we'll replace it for a gas at the moment. But I think we'll end up getting to a tipping point in the next few years, where as a council, we're looking at all those alternatives. So thanks for those questions, Vasiliki. I'm glad you managed to get them in the chat. Samia, did you want to come in?
Sorry for being late. It was completely out of my control. It's just a quick a suggestion. I know there were a number of Bramley House residents who wanted to join this evening, because we've been talking to quite a few people who couldn't make it for some reason. So I think what would be great if you could send them sort of bullet point about the discussion today, something quite quickly, so there's no lapse between now and the next meeting. And also thinking about interactive way for residents to get involved in giving their ideas, because I think, you know, consensus is really important. And there are lots of voices in Bramley House who would really want to be engaged, but for some reason can't necessarily attend meetings at certain time. So it'd be good to look at ways of having a way of people giving their input, even if they can't attend meetings. But most importantly, or as a priority, while it's fresh, something like a bullet point, a brief summary that could go to all the residents so they know what happened in this meeting.
Yeah, that's really cool, Samia. And I think we mentioned earlier about doing the e-newsletter. I know you probably have a number of WhatsApp groups are in place as well as a block. We're looking to set one up which is a more of a broadcast only group as well, so that we can get things like the video that Aubrey took earlier. We were talking about this as a team earlier. It'd be great if we just drop that in so people can see straight away. So hopefully you're going to see a lot more agility and speed in terms of our communication moving forwards, rather than, you know, waiting for meetings such as this. And of course, hopefully once One Bramley House's refurbishment is finished, we'll be very much looking forward to an in-person and hopefully sunny engagement event in the summer, where we'll be able to look at the windows. So that's really helpful, Samia. Thank you.
Good. Welcome.
Now, Vasiliki has asked a question on nuclear power. There's a nice way to end an otherwise harmonious meeting. So happy to have that debate about nuclear power, Vasiliki, with you. So I suppose if the government chooses to go down the route of nuclear power, then yes, one would benefit. The question to which it's actually cheap fuel is probably for another debate. But absolutely, the government nationally is looking at a range of options. There's a question over whether one considers nuclear power green or not. Personally, I don't. There are those who do. But I think in terms of the Council's 2030 target, the nuclear power or otherwise, the electricity grid is not going to green itself in time to meet that 2030 target. So that's another reason why we're looking at a heat network where we, you know, harness the heat that's around us in an ambient sense locally. 20 stations are on the way. I don't think any are near North Kent, but it sounds like you know more than I do on nuclear power Vasiliki, so more than happy to have that conversation when I next see you. Okay, fantastic. So thank you everybody for joining us. We will ping round a link of the recording via email and in the letter. I think we'll do those bullet points, Sammy, as you suggested, Aubrey, if you can pick that up. We'll look to start getting an e-newsletter going as soon as possible, and there's this section of the Bramley House refurbishment on our WRW11 app, which you're able to access, where these slides, for example, will be captured. So I just want to thank all of you for joining us once again, and really good to see things progressing. So just thank you to the team in very difficult circumstances, but we think that as things start to open up as an economy, we'll be able to get things going, and I'm hoping this time next year we'll have lots of happy residents who are really happy with their new state-of-the-art triple glazed windows. But I won't put an exact time on that at this stage, but we will work as quickly as we can with you all to make that dream a reality. So thanks again to all of you, and wish you all a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.